Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. As more folks join, feel free to type us a hello, maybe let us know where you're tuning in from. It's always fun to see. I know Heather and myself are on the complete opposite sides of the United States. So one great thing about GAS, connecting us all together. And to help set the stage, so to speak, my name is Jenna. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the operations and programs manager for the Glass Art Society. If this is your first time joining this program, oh, hi from the UK. Hi, Matt. If you have never been to one of our Glass Reflections conversations, every first Thursday of the month, we go live with someone from the glass community and explore how glass can be a vehicle for self-care and learn some tools for how to cultivate a sustainable art career, while also highlighting just the amazing resiliency of glass artists. Ooh, Australia, yay, all over the place. And so with that being said, today we are joined by glass maker and yoga teacher, Heather Larivee. Did I pronounce your last name right? Larivee?
Close. Larivee.
Larivee, okay.
Very
Heather
close.
Larivee. And Heather is a second generation glass blower and has been creating art with glass since 1996, exploring glass blowing, flame working, scientific, cold working, fusing, lost wax, kiln casting, and stained glass techniques. So a full breadth of knowledge of glass making, which is amazing. And Heather's work is inspired by everything from textures and social issues to nature and colors. Heather makes flame worked beads, pendants, mandalas, and other jewelry that she hopes will invoke emotions in viewers. Heather has studied at Corning Museum of Glass, Penland School of Crafts, the Pittsburgh Glass Center, and with folks at Everdream Studios. Heather's art has been published in New Glass Review, the Flow magazine, New Hampshire magazine, and has been exhibited with Harvard University and the League of North Hampshire Craftsmen. Is that correct? That's North Hampshire?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire words. It's Thursday, we're getting there.
Right.
And last little bit I want to share about Heather that is one of the main reasons I wanted to speak with her today is that in 2016 you were certified as a Kripalu yoga teacher, and you've been exploring the intersections between movement, glass blowing, and as you say, the creative flow ever since. So welcome, Heather. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, everybody. It's really cool to be invited to speak. Big shout out to Eric. Yeah, excited to be here and ready to talk all things glass and yoga.
Awesome. So I know I feel like I've talked a lot already, but just so that everyone has some idea of your background and your history, but is there anything else you'd like to share with folks about who you are or where you come from?
Oh boy. Well, I started out in the Midwest. That's where, all my family's from. Lived in Alaska for a while, and now I've been on the East Coast for a long time. The whole time I've been doing glass, I've been on the East Coast. Yeah, you mentioned I'm a second generation glass blower. So my mom's older brother, my uncle, was a neon worker for, like 54 years or so. So I always had this notion, this concept of glass blowing, that it was a thing. And I used to have this little spun glass ornament that was like this old-fashioned kind of candle with a little flame on top. And that was kind of my first visual and tactical exposure to glass. And, I was pretty little, like, we'll say 5 or so. But I always knew Uncle Mike blew glass. And as a matter of fact, it was like back in the 70s when he moved out to the Seattle-Tacoma area. And he did a lot of the neon signs that are out there.
Nice.
So yeah, that's kind of what got me started. Like the subconscious seeds were planted, and I've been working in glass for, well, yeah, like 6 years now. It's weird to even think that way.
Yeah, for sure. I would be curious to know, so like within the medium of glass, you predominantly work as a flame worker, correct? And so, like,
Right.
what drew you to that subsect of the glass field or community?
That's an awesome question. I started out with stained glass, and I thought that was all right. And then one day, the owner of the shop was giving a bead making class, so we used soft glass, Moretti glass, and little hothead torches and MAP gas tanks. I mean, very rudimentary, but it was awesome. And beads were all right, but I was more interested in making marbles, and I kind of drove her crazy trying to ask her, well, what if I did that? How could I? So that kind of propelled me on the hot glass journey. In 2003, I started going to the Corning Museum of Glass, and I just loved working at the furnace. It's big, it's hot, it's heavy, it's challenging. You can do anything, but it's prohibitive, right? You can't find a studio on every corner. It costs a lot of money to rent time and all of that. So I went back to that hothead torch, and I used that thing for so many years. And then I finally upgraded to a real torch. And then I upgraded again. This is my current torch. Little torch cameo here.
Oh, there it is.
And recently I upgraded. I got this blast shield, which is awesome for all you other flame workers out there. It's worth it. So yeah, I just found that flame working was a lot more accessible. It was more affordable, and I could do it by myself. So when I really got into glass, there wasn't anyone around me. There's a lot more people now, especially in my own backyard. It's interesting to see that evolution, but yeah, at the time it was just me. So you can kind of take it anywhere. You can pack up your studio and you can take it to the mountains, or you can take it, like literally you can take it with you, which is really awesome. I can't say that about other glass modalities as much, especially if we're changing phases, heating it up.
Yeah, you bring up very good points of just the extent to which glass making is or isn't accessible. And I really like how in your work, especially your presence on Instagram, like, and I'm pretty sure we're in your studio right now, like there's a lot of like mobility within the space in and of itself. And we'll definitely explore that some more as we dive in. But I also would love to know, in terms of like your background and getting to know you, more about your yoga education and your journey, and what led you, as being someone like fully in the glass scene, like how did you come across that other side of yourself?
Sure. So funny story. Back in 2009, I did a 2-month concentration at the Penland Craft School with Martin Yanetsky, and they offered morning yoga. I mean, I'd heard of yoga back then, but there really weren't yoga studios around where I lived. So I'm just like, yeah, yoga's not gonna do anything for me, but fine, I'll go, I'll check it out. So I was really pessimistic and suspicious. But when I was going through it, I mean, it was a morning, like energetic kind of flow. My heart rate was rising. I was getting hot and sweaty, and I was like, whoa, okay, maybe there is something to this yoga. Maybe it really can do something for me. At the time, I was getting into like trail running and things like that. So I would say probably like 2 years later, I really started exploring yoga more. Just doing it on my own, or maybe finding some videos online if I could. I mean, this is, I think we're getting into like very early YouTube days. Yeah, and I would see these ads in the backs of magazines for the Kripalu. I think it had a slightly different name back then, like Yoga Retreat Center or Yoga School, something like that. And I didn't know what that was, had no clue. And then fast forward several years forward, I found a studio, and I started going there, and everybody was just, I think, very accepting, and created a space. So whoever was showing up with whatever they were showing up with, you know, physically, mentally, whatever, there was a space for you. And that space was held. And it wasn't about chanting. It wasn't about holding a certain pose in a very specific way for a certain length of time. It was really about accommodating. And I think the instructors really met everybody where they were at, offered lots of options, and then once in a while would weave in something to think about. I mean, you know, everyone's got their own style, but some people were just very perhaps philosophical, or some were a little bit more metaphorical, but always gave something to kind of chew on. Like, oh, how does what I'm doing right now reflect or show up in other places in my life? Like, if I'm trying to do, you know, warrior, and I'm just, rah, I'm efforting really hard, why? And am I doing that in other places in life? And when I'm at the torch or when I'm at the furnace, I do notice that same thing. Like, oh, I'm efforting really hard and the glass just isn't really doing what I want. And then I feel my shoulders going up or my truth, you know, like it's all related. Everything just kind of like slows down, or like binds up, if you will. And like, if we just dial it down, you know, like the volume, just dial it down a couple notches, create a little ease, a little space, a little softness, what happens then? So those were kind of the teachings, I'll say, that I was getting, and it stuck with me. Then a few years later, I met this other woman that I used to work with, and she offered a yoga program at work, just very casual, lunchtime. Hey, come do some yoga with me. Okay, that sounds cool. And on a few occasions, she couldn't make it, and I said, well, maybe I could. Now, this is before I learned how to teach yoga. So I was winging it. But everybody had a good time. And I've later found out both the yoga studio instructors and this particular individual all went to Kripalu Yoga School. And that's really what kind of drove me in that direction. It does help that it's practically in my backyard. It's like 2 hours away from me in the Stockbridge, Mass area. So yeah, it was great. I went down there for 30 days and it was intense. 6 days, like 12, 14-hour days. You're doing all kinds of things. You're practicing the poses. You're learning anatomy. You're learning about the lineage. You're learning about, you know, what is even this thing, yoga?
Yeah.
But one of the most important things I got out of it was how to teach. I think there's a lot of really key elements in the act of giving information, receiving, and trying to help someone learn something that they've never done or seen before. That definitely helps me when I teach glass blowing classes. I can tune into how people are receiving, or, you know, if they're having trouble. I can change the wording of the question or the direction. You know, it gives me those cues for when to step in, when to back off, when to just create that space and just, you know, let that person be, or, you know, hang out and, hey, I'm here if you need support, you know, that kind of thing. So that's kind of my very long, windy way of saying, this is how, for me anyway, glass and yoga have intersected. There's so many similarities. I mean, I think even sometimes, like when you're working with hot glass, no matter what modality, you know, you have a certain moment in time to get it right. And if you just don't get it for whatever reason, you might be able to try again, or that might be it. But I think yoga kind of gives me that perspective where I can notice, am I breathing or am I holding my breath? If I hold my breath, I'm probably gonna mess up in that tiny window of getting it right. So remembering to breathe, just noticing that I'm breathing or not breathing, is huge. And I think, even some of the philosophies like practicing non-attachment. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
how often do we make something or we're in the process of making something and we're like, yes, this is the most awesome thing. This is it. This is the masterpiece. And depending on what modality, maybe you've got an hour into it, maybe you've got 30 hours into it. Who knows? But then comes that moment. It breaks, it falls on the floor, it cracks an account, whatever it is. And you're just like, oh. So I think the practice of non-attachment can help us kind of separate, and it's not so heartbreaking when it goes wrong, and you can kind of catch your breath, get some perspective, and maybe start to, and again, this I should really say this is my experience, but just being able to get some perspective and say, okay, what went right, what went wrong, what do I need to do differently moving forward? Can I try it again now, or do I have to, do it all over again, that kind of thing. So I think it just helps us to kind of pause, get some perspective building, and maybe even, and this one's hard, be gentle with ourselves, right? Instead of yelling at ourselves and like calling ourselves names, just be like, oh, that really sucks. That really sucks. Take a break, take a moment. And then when you have that clarity, start to think, what worked, what didn't work, what can I do differently? And, it's upon how do I pick up the pieces and move forward?
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I find it so interesting that your recollection or like your first memory of being in a yoga environment was because of a glass,
Yeah,
school and
exactly.
program. Like, that's amazing. How often do you hear that? Maybe more now, but I think that's such a beautiful way to tap into some of that like physical part that you were talking about and I know I had jotted down some notes about some of the awesome little videos you do on Instagram. But there's like the physical part of like moving your body and like taking care of your shoulders or your wrists or other parts. And then there's also the movement of like your breath. And that's something in my own practice that I really love exploring is just like noticing your breath and being mindful of that. And then also being aware of where and how it's moving in your body. So whether it's like you feel it in your chest or your shoulders or your belly or your nose, like there's so much to be aware of. And often, I mean, I definitely find myself holding my breath and then I'm like, oh no, I let it out. Like just let it out and then like come back to the breath. So yeah, so interesting.
I have a funny example. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, well,
do you want me to go? You go.
Yes. Okay. Because I want to talk about something that also connected us was one of our board of director members, Eric Goldschmidt, who works at Corning. And he had told us that you had led a yoga class at the Corning Museum of Glass. So this was back in 2018. And I would just love to learn a little bit about that experience and overall how you felt it went, especially being that this was like in a museum and a little different than your yoga in glass that was at Penland in the school.
Yeah, it was awesome. Being invited to teach a glass and yoga class was really an honor. I hope, once we're out of the woods with the pandemic, that I can come back again and teach those kinds of classes again. I think the folks there were really supportive. They were awesome. They accommodated us. It is different than, say, a typical yoga studio. If you've been to the Corning Museum of Glass studio, you might be familiar with the conference room area where it's like like a concrete, like sculpted concrete floor, almost like stone texture, and a bunch of chairs, and big projector and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So the staff cleared everything for us. We had total privacy. We dimmed the lights, and I brought bolsters, big bolsters, and lots of blocks, and that sort of thing for folks to use. We did a restorative session at the end of the day, and we did more of an energetic session in the morning. It was really awesome to be able to do that. Sometimes people kind of look in the window as they pass by, like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But it was great, and we invited staff to join us, and some of them
That was going to
did,
be
which
my
was
next
awesome.
question. Yeah, like was it
Yeah.
mostly staff or artists, or yeah, who was involved in the class?
Yeah, so the participants were largely the students in the flame working class that I led, and then whoever was on staff and was able to join us, they joined us. I think that was during the fall, so foot traffic during the fall is kind of light, so it was really quiet in the environment. Every now and then you might hear a little rumbling outside, but again, I think part of the practice of yoga, and it really helps with glassmaking, is that even though you might hear or see some external distraction, you can choose to continue focusing inward, focusing on that piece that you're making, or whatever it is, or even the thoughts that creep into our head and just won't turn off. We can start to focus on something else. Perhaps maybe it's as simple as just pressing your feet into the floor and noticing that you are in fact right here in the space right now. You're not out there, you're not back there. So yeah, those distractions could be overcome, and then we could all just continue what we were doing, focusing. Everybody, when we were done, everyone was like, this is awesome. So it was really exciting to be able to bring that. The tricky part, quite honestly, as a teacher, this is the tricky part. So when we were in class, I had this idea that we would take yoga breaks. And the thing with that is that everybody works at a different pace. So you may be just finishing up with something, but someone else is like halfway through theirs. It's really hard to get everybody to time at the right or at the same time. So I just modified on the fly, no biggie. But that was a learning lesson for me. Like, oh, okay, I may have had this structure planned out, but take that, throw it out the window, right? Because that's life. But it was really awesome. It was really awesome to be there, have all those supplies, and to have other staff even coming through and saying, hey, what can I do for, I'm really tight on this side, what do I do? So yeah, it's great to be able to just share.
Yeah, and that actually is a perfect segue to something I think would be really helpful to people who are here live or who watch the recording afterwards, is just what are some practices within a yoga practice that you think would be particularly helpful for glass artists, whether it's the physical side or maybe more of the mental side? What would you suggest?
Well, I'm trying to camera a little bit. Hopefully that works.
It's stalling. Oh wait, there we go.
All right. So,
yay!
I think a lot of time, I mean, this is kind of a not great angle, but just to demonstrate, I think when we are working, especially at the torch, we're doing, and we're doing, and we're constantly turning and turning and turning and turning. I know for me, my left hand is constantly turning, and it's always up, and this one is typically down. It's doing the tooling. But after a while I'm exaggerating, but it feels like we're going like that. So gotta remind myself all the time, especially if I'm getting ready for a show or something, I have a tendency, I think a lot of us probably do, to just keep going. Don't take a bathroom break. Don't take a what? You don't need any of that. Just keep going. So I have to remind myself, okay, every, two pieces that took me 10 minutes each, I'm stick it in the kiln, take a water break, take a stretch break, something like that, some kind of frequency or cadence like that. Just shut the torch off, refresh, hydrate, but stand up, right? Open the chest. So when we're hunched over like this, all those muscles along the back are just being pulled real tight. The muscles along the back of our bodies are working really hard to keep us standing up. So when we start bending over, now we're just putting more strain. So if you find that you're having low back strain or, upper back, the neck, look at how long you're staying in an activity or in a pose. Same thing for when you're on the bench. If you have someone flashing for you, make sure to get up and move and stretch. It's easier when you have to flash your own piece. That forces you to get up. But definitely at the torch, I find myself just standing there for a lot longer than I should. So one thing that I like to do is a forward fold, and if I do it, I'm going to go off camera and you're not going to see me, but essentially, you just stand with your feet about 2 fist bumps apart. The way I like to do it is just to inhale my arms up and exhale, and I fold forward, hinging from the hips. So I have a nice flat back as I hinge over, and then once I fully forward fold, I can bend my knees as much as I want. That takes some strain off the low back. I let my head hang down. Sometimes I grab opposite elbows and just swing. And when I do that, sometimes I'll get a nice release throughout the spine, right into the top of the neck where it connects to the skull. So I try to do that. And then the other one that I really enjoy, you can do this seated or standing, is to just inhale my arms like reaching for a baby, and then exhale as I bring my arms to clasp behind my hips. So, sometimes my hands, they get a good grip. Sometimes it feels like when I try to clasp, I'm putting a lot of strain on my shoulders. So sometimes I might just take like a strap, or sometimes my blow tube, my blow hose, whatever I have handy. I mean, hey, you could even use your Kevlar sleeve, right? So you just grab that Kevlar sleeve. And as you stand tall, it starts to open your chest, the shoulders, really counteracting the hunching forward. So I like to do that. I just kind of look up where the ceiling and the wall meet, and then maybe that's enough. But another thing I like to do is to tilt one ear towards one shoulder. And I'm feeling this right now. There's a lot going on in my neck muscles.
I feel like I always have to do that really slowly because, oh yeah, either looking up or looking down.
Yeah, you want to go nice and slow. And the slower you go, the more you notice. So you might notice, oh wow, there's sensation in a place I never knew I had.
Oh, that feels good.
And then you can add on even more by taking, keeping your hands right where they are, but then kind of lean to one side. And then maybe leaning toward the other side. And then coming back through center and releasing your hands. For the wrists and the forearms, I think whether we're, building a lost wax mold or divesting one, or we're turning at the torch, we're turning at the bench, whatever form of glass, foiling the edges of stained glass pieces. Um, we do a lot of repetitive motion with our hands, and I think it's great to massage the palms of the hands, just a gentle, um, with the other hand. Don't have to go crazy. That's really nice to do. But for stretching, what I like to do is just extend one arm and then point the fingers down. And with the opposite hand, gently pull that hand towards my body. I'm noticing some sensation along the top of my forearm. Mm-hmm. And then I can release that, and then, like, I'm trying to press my hand against the wall, same thing, opposite hand. Now I just gently pull my fingers back. And of course, you could do this against a wall too, or you can be on all fours on the floor. So, if you're pressing against a wall, it's just press. And then if you want, you can go this way. Sometimes this can be really intense on the inner forearm. So I would say, ease into this one. Depending on your flexibility, your range of motion, you may go far or not. And that doesn't really matter. All that matters is what you're feeling. And does that feel right? Or is it causing discomfort? If there's discomfort, ease out. Because sometimes when we stretch things that we haven't stretched in a while, or maybe ever, that can be really intense. And that new sensation can kind of trigger the stress response in the brain. So it's always good to just kind of ease into it, breathe into it, and ease out if that's what you need.
Yeah, thank you. And I really want to highlight something that I like about the way that you just taught in this little mini demonstration session, was just how diverse, or how many different options that you can have within a yoga practice, especially in the physical kind of asana side of it, whether you're in a chair or on the floor or standing against the wall. That's something that I have found really lovely about this practice, is that it can totally happen. You don't need a yoga mat,
Yes.
you can literally do this anywhere you are.
Yes.
And so, I just think that was really nice how you did that. And even I also want to highlight on your Instagram account, I briefly mentioned it, but you have all these really great short clips of you in front of your torch, fully aflamed torch, going through a couple of little exercises. And I just think that that's really inspiring for other glassmakers in their studio to maybe take some pauses and just be present and feel their bodies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm curious to hear. So, of course. So we are a little bit over time, but I did have one more question. Are you okay?
Absolutely.
To stay a little bit longer?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Last bit about those short videos that I also noticed. Just thought this was great. You use this hashtag flame asana, which is amazing. I just thought that was great. And asana, for folks, is just the physical posture movement parts of a yoga practice, just so that there's that little bit of context. But then shifting gears away from the teaching part of yoga in this kind of glass setting, I am also curious for you specifically as an artist, how do you integrate self-care into your artistic practice, or what types of routines and habits that you have to support yourself?
It's a daily practice. Sometimes I do really good, and sometimes not so good. So it's a daily practice. I am not at all perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I think one example of self-care is just reminding myself to take that hydration moment or to take that stretch break. I know that myself and a lot of other folks in the flame working world will go for hours. Recently, at the beginning of August, I did a 9-day outdoor fine art show, fine craft show. I had a demo booth. So for 9 days, I was doing demonstrations on my torch. So that's what I was talking about when you could pack it up with you. And on the last day, I was making a piece, and I think I went for 3 hours straight. So, that's like 3 hours of this, with the occasional, maybe I've got my little mini torch, and, but yeah, I just kept going. So we do that, and that's really hard on our bodies. So I think no matter what glass modality we're doing, if we're not taking those breaks, we are making our bodies work really, really harder than we really need to. And then I think allowing ourselves a little bit of downtime to restore or recover, especially if you've been doing 40 plus hours a week at your glass modality. Take some time off. I think strength building is really important. So especially flame working or furnace working, building the chest muscles, the upper arms, the upper back, the core is really important for that heavy lifting that we might do, or standing. Yeah. And I think doing other things outside of glass is also a good self-care. So I've been training for a century ride. I'm this Saturday going to road bike with my boyfriend. We're going to ride 100 miles. So I've been training for that.
Whoa.
Yeah. And that's been hard. Like, do I give up my torch time to go ride bikes? Because I have to put in hours at a time, you know what I mean? Or do I, commit and do what I said? So yeah, like those are some of my examples of self-care. So yeah, sometimes for me, it's more like what's going on in here than like what I'm doing physically. So, but yeah, definitely physical fitness. If I feel stronger, I feel better when I'm working at the torch.
Awesome. Thank you for all of those. And then I do want to make just a tiny bit of space for those who are still here. Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask Heather while we still have her?
I love questions.
Before she goes on her long bike ride. I don't know how you're going to 100. Oof.
I'm going to do it.
Impressive.
I'm going to do it. Oh, question.
Hello, discovering the art of glass is the first step of discovering the universe. Oh, well, that's beautiful.
Yes. There's so much chemistry and physics and science happening in class. Absolutely.
Okay.
Should I do like a quick studio tour? My studio is pretty small.
I usually would say yes, but I have been noticing when you move the phone, it gets a little bit glitchy. And so then maybe next time.
No problem.
But before we hop off, is there a way that people can connect with you, or do you have any upcoming like yoga classes or anything you would like to share with us?
Absolutely. Well, there's my logo, HethreGlass. And my Instagram is Heather_glass. So definitely give me a follow there. I was scheduled to teach a glass and yoga class in like 3 weeks, but unfortunately it got canceled. I think with, everything pandemic, it's kind of putting a crimp on things. But otherwise, I believe I'll be doing Craft Boston virtual show this year.
Oh, okay.
It's a holiday show.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll be most likely at Glass Vegas again in February of next year.
Oh,
So
awesome.
that's what I've got going on for shows. I think we're all kind of still in the same boat, you know, we're like shows
Hmm.
are on pause.
Yeah, kind of in the waiting period.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for all that you've shared with us today. It was really rejuvenating, both the mental and the physical side of it. And for those who are interested, we will tag Heather in this video. It'll be uploaded to the GAS website and our YouTube channel soon. And we hope to see you all next month. I hope you all are staying safe and you're doing well.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone. See you next time. Thank you, Heather.
Bye.